12:05, yeah. Okay. Welcome. I am Joe Lucia. I have the privilege of being the Dean of Libraries at Temple University, and I have spent the last 6 years working on this building. So I am delighted to welcome you here today. I can't say this is the first event. We've had a bunch of events in this room since we opened, including these musicians will be interested in this. The Concerto for 4 Harpsichords by Johann Sebastian Bach by our music department a few weeks ago. A few weeks ago. But it's been an exciting. Yeah, it feels like months. It's been an exciting few weeks for us here at in the libraries and at Temple as we've opened this building and brought it to life. And I'm really thrilled to have this panel here today to be, yet another exemplar of the ways in which this building can bring exciting new things to the campus. So as I said, this library just opened, I think we opened 9 or 10 weeks ago. It feels like years, but it also feels like a day. And when we conceived this building, working with the architects, and for those of you who may not know, the name of the firm that designed this building is Snøhetta. They're internationally prominent. Last year when they opened their new public library in Calgary, Alberta, it ended up on the New York Times list of 50 places to see in 2019. So maybe we'll get on that list for 2020. Anyway, we wanted a space that would be a central gathering point for the campus, that would get people out of their school and college environments and really become a crossroads and a place for collisions and unexpected interactions, and a place that really spoke to our students and faculty's highest aspirations. And I think when you walk into this building, you have a sense that it's a building that is largely about inspiration and connection and engagement. It's not your mother's library. It's a very different kind of library. And I'm happy that you all are here to be part of the experience of bringing it to life at Temple. It's been a truly extraordinary thing. So the library is becoming a hub for our campus, a place where people from various disciplines, backgrounds, and fields come together and engage. And this is one of the spaces in the building that specifically is designed for that purpose. We hope that it'll be a place where you study, where you interact, and, like in many other libraries, a place where you even fall in love. So this building should be at the center of your experience. It'll be a place where memories are made and where the student experience at Temple really comes to life. So that brings me to today's event. Back in the 70s, when John Oates and Darrell Hall roamed this campus, there was no such hub. If you read John's memoir, Change of Seasons, you will learn that he and Darrell actually met in an elevator at the Adelphi Ballroom in West Philadelphia while they were waiting to perform. Darrell was in a group called the Temptones, and John's group was called the Masters. On further discovering that they were interested in the same music and that both were attending Philadelphia's Temple University, they started spending time together on a regular basis and eventually shared a number of apartments in the city. The rest is history, and we are really thrilled to have John back on campus along with his longtime industry colleagues, Anthony Aquilado, David Haskell, and Phil Nicolo, to share their collective experience on working in the industry. And speaking of the 1970s, there was another Klein alumnus who was also roaming the campus at the same time as Hall and Oates, and that was Doug Main. Doug was a radio, television, and film major at the time and also took journalism classes. He has fond memories of John's remarkable hairstyle and played a key role producing many of Temple's concerts. Doug had a passion for soul and R&B music and the arts, and he still does. He grew up in Millersville, PA, coincidentally the same location as Steve Charles, who's the naming benefactor of this building. Boy, that's really neat. That's cool. While in high school, Doug, by his own admission, was a not-so-good lead singer. of the Randells. I believe it's the Randells, right? Not the Randalls, the Randells, okay. A not so good rock and roll band. He also moonlighted as a disc jockey and came to Temple for what was called at the time the School of Media and Communications. While at Temple, he produced many concerts, mostly held in the auditorium on the top floor of Mitten Hall. Following Temple, he had an illustrious business career as chief financial officer, both of IBM and before that of MCI. And MCI is now part of Verizon, right? Yeah, after all those consolidations in the telecom industry. Today he is with Brown Brothers Harriman, a 200-year-old Wall Street firm. He never lost his love of the arts. He has served as a member of the board of directors of Atlanta's Woodruff Arts Center, Washington, D.C.'s Wolf Trap Center for the Performing Arts, and today he leads the Bedford Playhouse in Bedford, New York, which is known as Hollywood East. Did not know that, due to all the celebrities who live in that area. He has produced 2 Broadway shows, the most recent being Getting the Band Back Together. Would that be the Randells? No. So I'm pleased to welcome Doug Main, who will introduce the panel.
So Dean Lucia mentioned that while I was a student at Temple, I produced concerts, including in 1970, the very first big-time concert on campus with the group Chicago in the brand spanking new McGonigal Hall. My Mitten Hall concerts were mostly battles of the bands, where we would put together 3 to 4 local Philly groups, and each would play for about 45 minutes. And I don't recall if the Masters or the Temptones were ever featured, so I really didn't know Daryl Hall or John Oates. I first heard Hall and Oates on a radio interview in roughly 1977. She's Gone, Sarah's Smile, and Rich Girl had all charted, so I knew their music, but I didn't know anything about them or what they looked like. In the interview, they mentioned Philadelphia, and that kind of got my attention. And later on, they said that they met at Temple. So I was in my car at the time, and when I got home, I opened up my copy of the 1970 Templar, and I checked for Daryl Hall, and he had graduated the year earlier, so he wasn't in the 70 version. But I see John Oates, and I immediately remembered John because he had the largest afro I think I had ever seen. And I took journalism classes, and John was a journalism major at Temple. So at any rate, it's a pleasure to be with John and the panel today, and all of you. So first off, I should say welcome to A Day in the Life on Tour, the launch of Klein College's first of many visiting artist panels yet to come. So you all are in the inaugural group here. I'm pleased to have the honor to introduce my former classmate, John Oates, and his longtime industry colleagues, Anthony Aquilado, David Haskell, and Phil Nicolo. And I'll tell you more about them in a minute. Live event production is a technical, creative, fast-paced industry with opportunities for individuals of various education levels. With careers ranging from tour managers, audio production, to touring production and management. A year from now, Klein will be rolling out new courses to help prepare students for working in this fast-growing and ever-changing field. The Visiting Artist Program gives Klein an opportunity to bring back celebrity alumni and industry professionals to share their unique experience and expertise and inspire the next generation of professionals. And that's you, everyone in the audience today. And now for our panel. All of you have had a long-standing relationship over the years with John, so we're fortunate enough to have you all here with us today. I'll start with Anthony Aquilino, who started touring when he was 17 years old with the band Chic. I remember Chic. Karen, you remember Chic. And spent time mixing sound in all the local New York City clubs from 1976 to 1980. In the 80s, he started touring full-time with Hall & Oates, Neil Young, In Excess, and many more artists before landing at Sony Music Entertainment. He has been front of house engineer, production manager, and or tour manager for Emmylou Harris, Sheryl Crow, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Hall & Oates, Michael McDonald, Simon & Garfunkel, to name a few, before moving to Nashville, where he lives today. Now, next, turning to David Haskell, who's the president of Morris Light and Sound, a total turnkey production services provider for the touring industry, with an impressive list of clients, including BTS, Hall & Oates, Queen, CMA Music Festival, CMA Awards, Kenny Chesney, and many more. David has over 30 years of experience in the production business, having served as a tour manager, production manager, front of house engineer, and producer for several of the biggest names in the industry. He's truly a jack of all trades. Phil Nicolo is the owner and founder of Studio 4, a recording studio in Philadelphia, and he's also a Klein College alumnus and current adjunct faculty member. 77. Phil began his music career as a teenager fixing speakers at a nearby drive-in theater with his brother Joe. After receiving his bachelor's degree from Temple in 1977, Phil and his brother founded Studio 4. Since then, Phil has helped create music with a wide variety of artists, including Urge Overkill, John Lennon, Bob Dylan, Amy Grant, Cypress Hill, Sting, Anthrax, Aerosmith, David Bromberg, Title Fight, and many more. And most recently, he's worked with Lauryn Hill. Finally, John Oates really needs no introduction. We're proud to call him our alumnus, and we are in awe of his remarkable career. Since their formation in the early 70s, Daryl Hall and John Oates have gone on to record 21 albums, which have sold over 80 million units, making them the most successful duo in rock history. I'll repeat that, the most successful duo in rock history. They have scored 10 #1 records and over 20 top 40 hits and have toured the world for decades. John is also an accomplished solo artist and recently released his memoir, Change of Seasons, co-written with Chris Epting in 2017. John's most recent record, Arkansas, was released in February 2018 and is inspired by the music and legacy of the legendary Mississippi John Hurt, as well as other artists and styles that represent the dawn of American popular music from the early 1920s and 30s. Klein College is honored to have John and Phil as key advisors on our new music media entrepreneurs program and on the planning for the rebuild of the famed Sigma Sound studio. I hope you all enjoy today's program and be inspired by the incredible experience that our panel has to offer. So let's give a big round of applause for John, Anthony, David, and Phil. We thank them in advance for sharing their time and talent with us today. I would also like to thank Dean Lucia for hosting us today and the staff at Charles Library and Klein College Media and Communications for making this possible. And I do want to call out a few names of the people that did the hard work of putting this together. First and foremost is Karen Gallagher. Wave, Karen. Next, Professor Jack Klotz. Joe Kraus, where's Joe? Chuck McCarthy. Aaron McGinn. Santon Parvick. Sir. Okay. John Pyle. Okay. Don Ramos. Okay. Aman Stankiewicz. Rob Velez. And one more, Sarah Wilson. Thank you all. With that, we'll turn it over to John Oates for the program.
Thanks, Doug. Appreciate it. Thank you guys for coming, and I hope you enjoy the experiences of these guys. You know, one thing that struck me earlier today when we all met here in Philadelphia to come to Temple is that talking about working as a professional in the entertainment, touring, especially touring business. Anthony Aquilotto literally got home at 3 a.m. last night from the Chicago tour, and he's here. Mr. David Haskell, I don't know what he was doing at 3 a.m., but I'm sure he was working. And Phil Nicolo just played the Hollywood Bowl with Lauryn Hill literally yesterday. So when you're a touring musician and you're involved in the world of touring and production, that's the type of life you lead. It never stops. You've got to work your butt off, and it's all about dedication and hard work. And so that being said, I would like to, well, let's start with Anthony Aquilata. Oh, I forgot to mention. In addition to all my accomplishments, I also live in one of Taylor Swift's old houses. I just wanted to say that I didn't think that this presentation would be complete without mentioning Taylor Swift. Because I see her credit card commercial constantly. So if you're aspiring to that, I suggest you lower your expectations a little bit. But other than that, there's lots of opportunities in this crazy world that we are all part of, and it's exciting and fun, and you work with amazing creative people, and you live a life that you could probably only dream of. So that's what you should aspire to. I want to start with Anthony Aquilata. Anthony and I met in late 70s, early 80s. I gave Anthony his first job. He came to SIR, Studio Instrument Rentals in New York, where we were rehearsing, and he had gotten hired to be a guitar roadie. And at one point during a break in our rehearsals, he came and put his arm around me and said, "Hey buddy, I've never done this before, what do I do?" And I said, "Do you know how to change strings?" He said, "No." I said, "Okay, let me show you." From that point on, he's had an amazing career. He's worked with some of the greatest artists in the music business, and has really made an incredible career for himself. So I'll turn it over to Anthony first and let him talk a little bit about what he does. And another thing I wanted to mention too, when you see everyone up here has experience in all sorts of segments of what we do. No one is just a one-trick pony. You've got to know about touring. You've got to know about the creative mentality of dealing with artists, the technology, and all those other things. So these guys have done it all, and I think you'll find their story pretty interesting.
Thank you, John. Hello, everyone. I don't know how loud I should talk, but I'm going to try to talk quietly, as I don't have much voice after yelling at my crew at the last loadout, which was just last night. I really don't know where to start. What can I say? As John was saying, this is an industry where you have to wear many, many hats. There's a lot to learn through the course of your education, and wherever you want to end up, there's a lot of paths that you're going to take to get there, whether it be a line producer, whether it be, you know, the DA, whether it be the actual producer of the event, the production manager, the tour manager, the front of house engineer. You need to understand every aspect of what's in front of you and behind you, meaning the guy who is doing what you want him to do, you need to know how to do that. And what you want to do, you need to learn how to get to that point as well, and study from all aspects. There's no single path to take in my learning this. I've always looked to everyone to try to learn. When you hire a crew, when you put people together, I found that you hire the best people that you can, and you leave them to do their jobs, because they are the best, of the cream of the crop, or the cream of your crop. And when you leave them to do their jobs, you get success, as opposed to finding, I hate to say, like micromanaging people and stopping them from their potential, because everybody has the potential to do what they can do, and let them do that. And you see the team grow. I mean, we work in an industry where it is team orientated, and this is another thing that I'm constantly talking to the team about. You might be part of the Clare Brothers sound company, but that doesn't mean that when all the sound is loaded into the truck, it's time for you to hit the lounge. There's still lighting to do, there's all sorts of things to do in the whole production as one. And when you can work as one in a team, there's an abundance amount of success and satisfaction. You know, when you're putting it all back into the truck at the end of the night, you've had a really successful event. You you're one with everyone, including the artist, because you're there to serve the artist and help them to create their art. And ultimately, that's what it's all about, right? If art is where you want to go with this, which is what it is, right? It's art. It's art on many levels, whether you're in video, whether you're in audio, whether you're in lighting, you're still part of the art. And I try to keep an open mind when I'm hired by someone to see their vision and to be able to take that vision and off the paper and into the realms of, oh, now we're in front of 20,000 people or 100,000 people. It's a big, it's a big undertaking. So I went from not knowing what to say to saying a lot about maybe nothing, but if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Questions at the end. Okay, well.
Thank you, Anthony. Yeah, we'll do Q&A at the end because these guys have a lot to say. So how about we go over to David Haskell. David works as a head of Morris Light and Sound in Nashville. And here again, I'll repeat myself, but we've all done everything. So knowing all aspects of the job is a super important qualification for what we do. But one thing I wanted to, hopefully David will address, is David does everything from playing giant football stadiums with Kenny Chesney to playing clubs and everything in between. I think it's very interesting to talk about a little bit about what you do in general and what your company does, but also how you're able to craft a production that is flexible enough to go from 80,000 people one night to 300 people the next night, and how that works.
Yeah, thank you, John. I think scalability that's a great word for it. Scalable in what we do in production, but the one thing that makes it scalable is that the basics are there. No matter if you're playing a nightclub or if you're gigging over here in the library or you're playing the Philadelphia Stadium, which we will be later this year, knowing the basics of how things get from one place to the other, that is probably the most key thing. Don't ever take your eye off of the most basic principles that you see. Well, I want to skip over and I want to get to this because it's cooler or this because it's newer. The basic principles of anything in production, or hell, anything in life as far as that goes, is always remember to stay with the basics. That allows you to scale. If you can do it one time, you can do it 100 times. You can do it 10,000 times. You can do it 1,000,000 times. One thing that's common amongst all this is the absolute basic principles that hopefully all of these fine instructors here that you see in the room are going to be imparting that wisdom onto you. So what my background is, I started into this when I was 16 years old, left when I was 17 and started gigging on the road. So I do not come from a formal education. My education comes from getting knocked down and getting picked back up. Getting knocked down, as cliche as that sounds, that is probably the best way to learn in this business. You have to skin your knees up. You've got to make mistakes. And hopefully you will. We all have. So that's kind of how I got my affinity for music. That's how I got started in this. I fancied myself as a fantastic guitar player when I was 14 years old and quickly got knocked down and figured out that I could make a lot more money on the other end of this microphone than I can standing in front of it. Another thing as far as scaling goes is, one thing that I can offer is no matter how many people, just show of hands, how many people want to be audio people? Lighting. That's rare. Well, we'll get into that later. IT. How many people are IT people? You, sir, are going to be a millionaire. You, sir, are going to be a multi-millionaire. That is one. What are you doing tomorrow? Yeah, you want to come back with us? No, but I say zoom out. No matter what your primary area of focus is, zoom out a lot, because you'll find out that there are so many peripheral things that you don't even realize until you get in it that you can do. You might be wired for that better than what you are for something else. And almost 9 times out of 10, I've done this a lot, I've talked to a lot of students around, and that zooming out factor is probably the best thing that I can impart to you. Look, don't just look what's on the nail of the head, look back on the 2x4 and the shingles on the house, because you're going to find something that's going to be, really good for you. And I always remember, we can talk technical to you all day long, but I saw one sign in here today when we came in the library. It was called the Student Success Center. Holy crap, how cool is that? It ain't a library, it's a Student Success Center. Whoever came up with that, kudos, I'm stealing it. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, brilliant, and it imparts positive attitude. The old cliche of another thing that I can tell you about, no matter what field that you want to get into this, always remember to use a sports cliche. No, not to use, I'm going to use one, I'm sorry, that's what I'm saying. But your personality and how you interact with the people around you is probably the most important thing that you can have. Any professional basketball player, football player, the amount of time that they spend doing their craft, much like John, the artist doing their craft, that's 2% of their daily time. So we're looking for people to work with us or go out, and as Anthony says, we assemble our team. It's 80% how you hang in the locker room, and about 2% of how well you think you can do what you do. Always keep that in mind. It's more how you interact with your teammates, not being a star. It's a big, big thing there. So, bark less, wag more. That's good, right? And listen. You learn more by listening. That's why you have 2 of these and 1 of these. Remember that.
Thanks, David. Before we get over to Phil Nicolo, David, could you just talk about the importance in the modern live touring world, how important the idea of video and content, and video content especially, and as you said, IT, because we noticed that no one was interested in lighting and video. It may be one of the most important things that's happening right now, and in the future it will be even more important. Could you just touch on a little bit of that?
No question. The advent of video, I'd say just in the last 10 years, what I've seen in the touring world, it's really taking, it's a visual medium, and it is so important. It's telling the story, of what an artist, it's a big part of conveying that message, telling that story of what they're doing. Also, it's not so much just telling the story, but it's a visual medium that makes you go, wow, and hopefully pulls you in, not away. But the IT side of that, and as we talked about zooming out, okay, so you have the video screen, the gigantic Me TV, as we refer to it sometimes on stage. Okay, you have to have a person who's technically savvy to be able to rig these things because they weigh 40 and 50,000 pounds these days. Putting that up over somebody's head safely, there's one thing. Second is the guy who knows how to interconnect it and make it all work. Third is the person who has to create that content. Not just what you see. Somebody in a lab in a computer with a visual media is creating that. You're painting a picture. See, it just goes on and on and on with the things. And then the person who's operating the switcher that physically makes the changes from the camera to the director, if you will. See where I'm going with this? The video screen that you see, and IT, that is the most important thing, because I hopefully all you guys that are in production, you can't do a single thing without a computer or an IP address for anything these days. To kind of nerd out and talk technical just quickly, we did the most recent BTS tour. I'm sure people are familiar with the Korean boy band. To operate that tour, we had 4 50-gig networks running. If any of you guys are computer geeks, that probably registers to you. So much revolves on that. And the video side of it, that's the new medium. You're painting. It's the new lighting. Really shocked that nobody lighting. It's usually opposite. It's usually everybody wants to be a video and a lighting person, not a lighting person.
We may have some folks over in the other room.
Got you. Hey, everybody in the other room, yeah, come see me. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm passing it over to Phil Nicolo. Phil and I got to work together in the late 80s, early 90s. We had a radical adventure with a very gifted but flawed individual in Oklahoma. And we spent 6 months in a small town in Oklahoma.
Leonard, Oklahoma, recording in his garage because he wouldn't leave. And Phil built his studio for him, and we had quite an adventure, which is best left for another book.
But anyway, Phil is incredible. You know a little bit about his credits, but let Phil talk about studio work and anything else he wants to talk about.
First of all, again, it's great to be here. The one thing I'm really happy about is that as this is progressing, it's turning into a pep rally more than anything, which is the most important thing. There's no silver bullet, there's no magic answer, there's no one thing that gets you anywhere. It's all those things put together with an amazing amount of energy and passion. And that's, we were sitting here earlier at the little boardroom, and we've been doing this for at least 30, 40 years. And yet we're all still excited about what we do. We're still talking about, oh, I just thought of this, and did you see that, and I just heard about that. Because that passion that I got when I was 10 years old fixing speakers at the mainline drive-in, I'm still pushing forward. And that's the thing, all I can tell you that every person here has said is pull back, keep your options open, but push that passion, that dedication, that focus. Because let me tell you, it's 5 times harder than you think it is, but when you get there, it's 100 times better than you imagined it could be. It's so rewarding, it's so fulfilling. That's why he gets done at 3 o'clock in the morning and gets on an airplane to get here. I get done at the Hollywood Bowl at 1:30 and catch a plane at 6 o'clock because we love it. And it's that passion that just puts it over the edge. But you have to accept any opportunity. If you have an opportunity to do IT on a tour, IT, what? Yeah, those guys get there before the sound and the video people or the audio people get there. Because when you're setting up Coachella, what do you have to set up first? The infrastructure, the IT, the 10, 50 gig networks that everything's going to work on. And it's important. So you start but no, I want to mix front of house. Do IT for 2 years. Get to know the people in front of house. And then you learn and you progress. So what my biggest advice, just like everyone has said, is step back. Take any opportunity. Any and every opportunity. Because it is hard. It is hard. Less than 1% of you, the figures show, will be doing it at the ultra highest level. Now, that's the goal to try to attain. That doesn't mean you shouldn't try, because there's so many wonderful levels of doing this, even part-time. But still, to get to that highest level, oh my God, it is almost impossible. Almost. But if you have that passion and that dedication, you'll get there. You will get there. I was sitting in this building 30, 40 years ago. I graduated in 77. And still, it was a churn. It was a trial. My twin brother and I started half-track recording in 77. By 1980, I was making almost $718 a year. Almost. It was actually around $715. I'm not kidding. I'll show you my 1980 tax return. $718. Why? My wife was working 2 jobs, and I was putting every cent I had back into the business because I couldn't do and didn't want to do anything else, right? And that's the passion you have to have. You just have to have that internal, holy cow, I can't do anything else. And then you'll get there to whatever level it is. And everything these gentlemen have said about the live arena is so true. And I didn't enter it until 10 years ago. I was a studio guy, Studio 4, Rough House Records, studio. But then in 2010, one of our artists, Lauren Hill, who had taken a 7-8 year hiatus, decided, I want to get back into making music again. Love it. I want to do touring for a minute first. Okay, I can do that. I didn't know a tour bus from the freaking can of paint, man. Yet, sure, so let's do it. And myself, her mother Valerie, and the agency group in New York started a tour. We started in New Zealand, and Australia, and Portugal, and I didn't know how to do a tour again, but I learned really fast about visas, about backline, about advancing the gig, about ticket sales, about blah, blah, blah. And it was this, oh my God, what am I doing? But as again, these gentlemen have said, I found people who knew what they were doing to help and to get on board. But most importantly, because they wanted to. And we all worked together as a team. And we built that team to start Miss Hill on her new journey of getting back into the music business. And I learned, wow, this is what the live gig is about. And I did it for a year and a half before I'm like, I gotta stop, get back into the studio. But the one thing that also happened at that time was there was the merge of live and studio. You know, there was a time when a studio engineer, oh, you're a studio engineer. And the live engineer, you're a live engineer. There was very little kind of interaction between the two. It's totally different now. Because everybody, not everybody, but so many acts play to a track. Even legacy acts, like Lauryn Hill and Bon Jovi, they play to a track. There are some acts...
Not Hall & Oates.
Not Hall & Oates, no, not Hall & Oates, absolutely. And not Chicago, but there is so much of that interaction of, as John said earlier in our meeting, of bringing the studio experience to the stage. And there's so much of that now that there's a lot of overlap between studio and live. So knowing, you know, both, yet they're still radically different. You don't mix front of house the way you mix a record. And you don't mix a record the way you would mix front of house, or even set up microphones or production. So there's so many things, yet there's so many opportunities out there. And the thing right now, as many of you probably know, is that because of, you know, you can yell about, oh, streaming and big business and blah, 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 and the music industry, you know, it's like a tenth of what it used to be. Okay. But the live arena is as big and growing more every day. So go to where the food is. Go to, you know, look in the live thing. You know, I mean, again, that doesn't mean you shouldn't pursue the studio. And just like these gentlemen have very accurately put, you know, you want to get into sound, audio, that's great. But man, I'm telling you, the video thing is so huge. You know, I just finished a show with Lauryn Hill at the Hollywood Bowl. Well, more than half of the rehearsal wasn't to get the 30 string players in sync. It was to get the video in sync with our Ableton. So there was all this technical aspect of the video, the track, the live aspects that change every show, the monitor engineer. Again, I was telling you these wonderful guys earlier, I got to the gig, and Miss Hill's personal assistant, production manager, Rebecca, goes, oh, by the way, Phil, we have a new monitor engineer tonight. You what? What? It's just a Hollywood Bowl. But it was just like, okay. Yeah, absolutely. Let me go talk to Doug. Well, yeah, it worked. It worked out. Because you ask anybody on Miss Hill's team, what's my job? It's called security blanket. It's called, oh, Phil, get it to work. Phil's got it. Okay. Every team needs major players, just like these gentlemen, that make it work. Because they don't stop until it is. And the artist has the comfort to rely on people that they know it's going to happen. They know at the CMAs, it's going to be good. We're not going to have something screw up. Or any major show, Hall & Oates show, it's going to be good. People are going to love it because it captures the essence of the moment. And it captures the essence of the music. And that's so important. So I'm blessed to be able to do this on so many different levels. You know, but, you know, in terms of, again, the live technical side, which is kind of my gig when I'm working with, whether it's, again, I do some work with Bon Jovi and Miss Lauryn Hill and a few other bands. It's more integration of all the pieces and making sure that they all work together because there's so many moving parts that have to work. And yet, you know, and again, as everyone has said, forget about the physiological stuff. You know, that's fine. You'll learn, and you know, like He didn't know how to string a guitar. Yeah, well, he learned it. But he knew how to interact with people. He knew how to make himself valuable. He knew how to get people to go, I want you to be with, you know what? You don't know, but you'll find out. I want you. I want you with me. Because on a desert island, you're the person that's going to figure out that coconut water is a diuretic, or whatever it is, okay? Bad, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm done. Too much information. It was Gilligan's Island or something I learned it from. But
Basically, what he's saying, music business is a shit show. And
yes.
after that,
And every day you take a bite? Is that that's the...
not really, but yeah, okay.
But anyway, thank you so much. It's really great to be here. We're going to take some questions.
Well, can I talk? I don't get to talk. What about me? I mean, after all, it is about me, isn't it? I lost track of everything.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me present to you Mr. John Oates. Give him a round of applause. Big round of applause.
Okay. All right. Okay. In all seriousness, I do a lot of interviews and things, and just listening to everyone, I'm really totally on board with everything everyone said up here. I get asked a lot about my opinion of the state of the music business, and my answer is I'm not sure what the state of the music business is, because I'm not in the record business anymore. I'm in the touring business. And I say that in all, with a heavy truth, because fortunately for Daryl and I, we've made a ton of recorded music. That music gets played constantly on the radio, so we're in a very unique and lucky, fortunate position. But what we do is we tour. And Daryl and I have never stopped touring from the time we started in 1972. And even when Daryl and I stop our tours, I do solo tours. Playing live for me is, it's not only is it an amazing way to connect with your audience and to stay vital, but it keeps you fresh, and it keeps you, like if you're an instrumentalist, it keeps your chops up, you're able to play. Like for instance, I like nothing better than going into the recording studio immediately after coming off tour, because I'm playing better than I've ever played before, because I'm playing every night. And even though I'm playing a lot of, for the most part, the same songs all the time, it doesn't matter. You find new ways of reinventing the songs, reinventing the arrangements, being spontaneous and working within the existing arrangements. But what I really wanted to talk about from my point of view is being kind of at the top of the of the food chain or the pyramid of this touring business as the artist. It's yeah, sure, you're on the billboards, it's your picture, it's your name, people are buying tickets for. But the support system that you have, with you, the team that, like as Anthony was mentioning, the team that you put together is incredibly critical to making that show come off. Sure, you're the guy out there in the lights, and you're the one on the big video screen, but nevertheless, without all the infrastructure and the crew and the load-in and the technical people, you really can't make that show happen. And the one thing I wanted to talk about really quickly, because they've really covered it, but I wanted to talk about just the aspect of human interaction. Hiring people, for instance, living in Nashville, one of the first things I learned in Nashville was that there are 100 amazing guitar players and instrumentalists. So Vince Gill, who is an incredible musician, and I hold in the highest regard, he told me one day, he said it's not about who's the best guitar player. He said, who's the right guitar player for the moment. So he said, look at, if you're making a record or you're producing something, look at it this way. You're the director of a film. You have to choose the right actor, or in this case, the right musician, to play what you need them to play. And it's the same relationship goes when you talk about your touring team. If you have a guy in a band who's a cancer, so to speak, he's a troublemaker, he has personality problems, has issues, who knows what it might be. It could be a million things. Everyone's unique. You have to decide what's more important, his ability to play the guitar or the drums or the bass or whatever, or is he more valuable because he's a good musician, or is he going to be a problem for you down the road when you're living on a tour bus, staying in hotels, and living in this little village, this little mobile village that's traveling from city to city? I always say if I had a choice between two instrumentalists, two players, and one was incredibly good and was a real problem and had issues, and one was maybe not quite so good, but was a great person and someone we could live with, I would choose that person because I feel I can bring them along. I can help them become better. I can help them become a better part of the team and make the whole greater than the sum of its parts. So it's really important that it becomes it's almost like it is a family. It's not almost like a family. It is a true family. And if you're together for 6 months, or you're together for a week, or years for that matter, it's really important to surround yourself with people who can elevate what it is that you're trying to do and help you, attain that ultimate goal, that vision, that musical vision, or whatever it is that you might be. And always choose the person who has potential and who has good qualities as a human being over someone who might be flashy and perhaps, someone that might be trying to upstage you, basically. That's kind of a joke. Not really. But anyway, that's what I wanted to say. Really, it's all about people. It's all about people. Anthony said, find the best people, surround yourself with the best people, learn from them, and let them do what they do. And in a lot of ways, as an artist, talking from an artist's point of view, you have to be a human manager. You have to manage the people around you and make sure that they're going to achieve what you want to achieve. So that being said, let's do some Q&A. Where do you want to start?
Somebody has a question.
First of all, good afternoon. It's an honor to meet everyone. I'm currently a freshman here, and after hearing about your stories and how difficult it can start and the different levels that you have to go to, I was specifically interested with you, Mr. Oates, on how you started in journalism, but then you just took a leap of faith and went on to pursue music. And for me, I'm having that struggle between something a little more on the academic side and something artistic. What really pushed you to that edge and gave you the courage to go towards passion instead of stability?
Well, I have a unique situation. I was a musician from the time I was born, basically. I started playing guitar at 6 years old and taking vocal lessons. So I never really thought I would do anything but music. I always, as your parents probably told you, it's good to have a plan B or a backup plan. But I had a unique, I grew up and I was here at Temple University during a very unusual period of time in American history. It was the Vietnam War. If you were a full-time student and you stayed for 4 years, you could be deferred from going into the service. I was not a believer in what was going on in Vietnam. I was part of that generation that was kind of rebelling. And also I had a number of my friends from high school who were killed, and I was not interested in going to Vietnam. I knew if I stayed in school. So, I'm not trying to belittle what the educational aspect of what I got out of Temple, but I took the path of least resistance. I became a journalism major because I enjoy writing. I love reading and writing, and I found it very easy for me. So I could focus on music outside of school. But what the big, one of the most important aspects of coming to Temple University, as opposed to some of the other state schools that I could have gone to, was that it was in Philadelphia. And Philadelphia was a hotbed of musical influence at the time. And I knew that if I grew up in a small town, North Wales, Pennsylvania, I knew if I came to the city, I would have opportunities. I didn't know what those opportunities were going to be. I didn't know I was going to meet Daryl Hall. I didn't know I would have a giant professional music career. It was not even remotely something I was thinking about. But I knew that if I was in the city, I would have opportunities, and that's what happened. I began to do some recording, studio work. I began to, obviously I met Daryl, I met a lot of other musicians, and so being here at Temple every day and then staying in the city at night gave me the opportunity to go to the Uptown Theater here on Broad Street and see the great R&B acts of the 60s. Go to the Philadelphia Folk Festival and see the amazing traditional musicians who were being rediscovered at that time during the folk revival. So it was really, that was more important for me, and that's probably the most important thing that happened to me while I was at school. And I think one thing that I heard other people say it, and I truly believe it, when you go to college, I think in addition to the sheepskin and the education you're getting, if you can figure out who it is that you are or who you can become, is probably the most important thing in your college education.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to be sitting in front of you guys this morning. I kind of have a question for Mr. Oates. What advice would you give yourself when you were just starting out music, and what do you wish you knew when you were starting your gig in the music industry?
Well, you know, before I answer the question, I will say that with this new facility that's going to happen here at Temple, which sounds very exciting, by the way, with the recording studio and the live components, I think an important component to that music education should be the business, the music business educational aspect. It should be it should be stressed, because you have to understand the business side and the legal side of this industry that you're getting into. So now, to answer your question, I wish I would have paid more attention to that as a young musician growing up, and I let a lot of those things, I let the responsibility for a lot of that be under the control of other people. You know, there was a lot of business problems, which is not uncommon at all when you talk to various other artists. So learning about the business, understanding, you know, about publishing and the legal and business side of it is very important. And I hope that the school does cover that aspect, because every musician or anyone who wants to be in the music business should have at least a basic knowledge of that.
Hi, I guess this is a question for everyone, being that you have been professionals for years. So I have a question about women in this business and in leadership roles. Do you think, what has been your point of view? Do you think it's been getting better, or what's going on?
David's in a position of hiring, you know, and having people, you know, pulling people together for a tour and a team. So that's
Absolutely. It's a very good question, and a very, very poignant question these days right now. We have in our company historically, this business, I'll call the live business, if you will, the touring business, was very much more male dominant, not so much female. That I'm seeing that shift completely. I have 134 full-time employees in my company, and almost 55, 60 of them are women now. I have women on my executive staff, women that are telling me what to do, you know, how to run the company. And I have a woman who's telling me what to do. Yeah. Well, Molly, my wife said the same thing. But to answer your question, I think the shift in that is really changed in the last 3 to 5 years, and it has nothing to do with your gender. It has to do with your ability and your drive to do that. I mean, I think personally, from my personal view of it, it makes no difference to me if it's a man or if it's a woman that's doing the job. It matters not to me. It's how present you are. You know, the term, it's thrown out loosely, but must be present to win. Think about that for a minute. Not just present physically there, go to these places, be part of it, be present, but being present up here is a big part of it. But absolutely, I mean, women in this business I think it's a fantastic thing. I encourage it. Yeah, it makes no difference to me.
And I do think that, and if you just look in the industry, you'll notice even in the last 2 years, there's been a wider acceptance, and I think, and I shouldn't say like women are given more of a chance, but I think in a way the view is getting wider. And you see that even in major positions in the industry. The new CEO of Epic Records, Sylvia Rohn. The new CEO of the Recording Academy, sorry, her name escapes my, but is a woman. And it's not because, oh, let's bring women in. It's because they've always been qualified, but now they're actually being viewed as qualified. So their qualifications haven't changed, but their acceptance of being accepted in that position is getting wider. It's a slow road. It's not perfect. It's just like any, whether it's civil rights or human rights or anything. It takes time. But I have to say, in a positive way, I am seeing that window getting wider. And it just needs to work that much harder, obviously, because as we've said, you still have to be able to deliver. You have to have, probably being even more qualified, because you do have that, a little bit of that hurdle to get over. Oh, also, just real quick, John, we were saying about this new facility. Before we forget, I want to recognize Mr. Joe Tarsia is here in the front row, okay? In case you don't know, Joe is certainly the founder of Sigma Sound, but more importantly, he's the architect of the sound of Philadelphia. I mean, Gamble and Huff and all the great performers made the music, but Mr. Tarsia was the one who captured the music. And that's no easy feat, because we talk about personality and interest and change, and it's something to be in that room and get the artist, as we say, to dare to suck. Dare to get to the point that you can't do it, or you're willing to try it 5 or 100 times. That's not easy. And that's one thing I learned from Mr. Tarsia is that knowledge, that passion, and the technical in terms of this guy could build the equipment. And I'm so happy that in this new facility, we're going to have an homage to Sigma Sound and build a somewhat rescaled mock-up of Sigma Sound here in this new facility. But again, before I forget, I really wanted to tell Joe, thank you so much for coming today and for being that passionate. And what, 85, John? You're 85? This 85, and he's still coming out and doing this shit because he loves it, right? So yeah, I just want to make that mention before. Next question. Oh, we have some internet questions here too, but they're not that good.
Am I allowed to ask? Okay. I was just going to say what, or how should I say? Are you keeping up with technology and advancements in technology with things like AR and holograms in live entertainment?
That's a great question, because it's constantly evolving. How we keep up, or how our company, or all the people that work with me on our team keep up with it, is research, learn. I had no idea what AR, as you refer to it, that means accounts receivable to me. And AR, we just really important. That's one thing you need to learn about. Yeah. But the AR side of things, we just recently did that on the last BTS tour. It was a very involved thing, and I had no clue until I submerged myself into this whole other truck and division that was touring with us, that was recreating an environment that people in the stadium couldn't even see. And then these people that are tuning or streaming, maybe some of you saw it, and one of the 5, 6, 7 kids are running down, and there's giraffes rocking around them and birds singing around them. I was like, wow, this is going to the next level. And I think that's something that's going to happen. But how do we keep up with it? Research, learn, listen.
Can I just add something to that?
Sure.
A few years back, Daryl and I we were playing smaller venues, and we got back into the arenas a few years ago. We're playing the larger arenas again. And so I hadn't been in that environment, the arena environment, which of course requires us a larger scale production. You have to reach the people way up in the top, in the back, who really are experiencing the show through the video screens. In all honesty, I was not that familiar with it, and we were beginning to create some video content and to put some things together. And I was wondering, back in the old days, what we would have done is we would have had to go into rehearsal. We would have had to literally set up the physical lighting trusses and the sound and everything, and rehearse the show, so that lighting cues could be established, audio cues could be established. Everyone could learn the show. Well, I was talking to David about how we were going to approach this arena tour, and David said, well, why don't you come to the office and we'll do it in virtual reality? And I was like, whoa, what do you mean? He said, well, we'll put you on stage and we'll recreate the lighting truss and the video screens, and you'll be able to see what the show, and we'll play a recorded version of the live show, and we'll program the show in virtual reality. And I was like, really? We can do this? And honestly, I had no clue. And I literally went in for a few days, sat in the screen, saw mock-ups of me and Daryl and the band on stage. We ran the tape of the file of our live show, and we programmed the lights and programmed the content. And I was just completely blown away. It saved me weeks of pre-production, and a lot of things went so much quicker. And so when we did the first arena show, after not having been in an arena in many, many years, we walked on stage with no rehearsal and did the first show, and it was exactly like it was in the virtual reality room. So that being said, I mean, this is only the tip of the iceberg of where this is going. So there's, here again, yet another opportunity. We had an amazing video engineer who was there dialing all this stuff up for us. And I would assume that in your new facility, you'll have a room like that, where you'll be able to recreate shows and actually put on performances in VR.
So you guys have been in all these industries for, I guess, a really long time, and you've dealt with a lot of personalities. So how do you deal with people that are not committed? Like there's smooth talkers that get their way and they just don't, execute anything.
A few years ago, and I won't go into like a lot of details on this, but I will say that a few years ago we had a tour where we assembled a crew. 90% of the crew was great. We had a few bad apples. We had one guy who was selling drugs to the rest of the crew, and we had some people who had misrepresented themselves and their past. They had drug problems, personality problems. Some of that stuff did not, it wasn't clear in the beginning. Everyone puts on their best face when they start. And all of a sudden, as things began to deteriorate, we were able to identify the people who were basically the cancers in the family. And so it took some weeding out. We had to deal with it. We literally had to send people home in the middle of the night. We had to literally go in and open their door of their hotel room and get them physically and take them out and put them on a plane. So those things do happen, and you have to be flexible, and that's when you need to have a really cohesive team that can, stand behind you, and that's when I can call someone like Anthony or David and say, hey, we just lost our on-stage monitor guy. We need another guy, and we need him tomorrow in Minneapolis. And that's the type of thing that you have to be flexible enough to do.
It's very clear that you are all very passionate about your careers, and it's also clear that it's a very demanding career. So I just want to know that after so many years in the industry, how are you able to retain that passion, and what do you do to avoid feeling burnout and like the work is just not fun anymore?
I was going to work at Blockbuster, but I heard they closed. So when I couldn't get the job there, I figured I better practice a little harder. So, it's just, it's one of those things. I mean, people ask me when I'm going to retire. I said, why would I want to retire? I'm doing what everyone else dreams of doing. I play guitar and sing for a living and write songs with incredibly talented people and go into the recording studio and make magic, make something from nothing. I wouldn't, that's where the passion comes from. And I think all these guys are the same. They do it because they spent a lifetime learning their craft. They're good at it. They love it. And every day is exciting. Whenever you're working with talented people, sure, there's a lot of talented people who are flawed in many ways. But they're always, one thing I always say about the music business, it's never boring. Ever boring. There's ever.
What's the word of the day?
Knackered.
Have we all heard that?
talk about passion and being tired. The word of the day here at Temple University, the library, is knackered. It's actually, as you walk out here, you'll see it on the desk as you check out something, your computer. I guess you don't need books anymore. But knackered means to be tired and exhausted, but yet all at the same time. So, knackered. We got it in there. The word in today.
Well, I have a question. I just want to say I'm a very big fan, so it's really great to have you here. And I was wondering what your favorite song to write and perform is.
Well, my favorite song to write is the one that I'm going to write tomorrow. I'm being totally serious about that. I'm not nostalgic in any way. I don't look back on the songs I've written in the past in my career. I'm grateful for them, and I'm really happy and still proud of to play them every night. Over and over. Man-eater. Over. No. Daryl and I, we kind of, we have this amazing problem. We have a lot of hits. So a lot of people, obviously when people come to see us, there's songs that they want to hear. We have the way we look at it, we have a professional responsibility to play the songs that people want to hear, but we also have 400 other songs that we don't get to play because of that unique, amazing problem that we have. So I would just say that I like a lot of the songs. I always go back to She's Gone, which is a song that we wrote in 1972 on the Abandoned Luncheonette album, because it was a song that really put us on the map. It was the first song that radio picked up on, began to play. We began to become well known because of that song. So it has a little bit special meaning. And also it's a song that even 40 plus years later, it still sounds as good as the day we wrote it. And I think that's the mark of a good song.
Hi, first off, I just want to thank you for coming out. This has been a great talk and discussion. I learned so much. This question for everybody. I just want to know, as a student, I always hear from my professors that the importance of finding a mentor. Was there any mentors that played an important and vital role in your careers?
You better mention me.
Yeah. When I first went to work with Daryl and John, and we hunkered down at Electric Lady in New York, the engineer at the time, Mr. Bob Clearmountain, who is probably one of the most world-renowned mix engineers, who has become that, was someone who I kind of paid attention to all the time. I want to ask a question, if I can, before I finish. David asked earlier what you all do. There was a lot of audio hands up. How many of you are musicians? Musicians, yeah. I am not a musician. I never was a musician. Magician, yeah. And the two go hand in hand. Musicians want to learn audio, and when you're in the studio, that's all you're kind of thinking about. So not being a musician, but still wanting to learn about audio. When I went to school in the 70s, this curriculum didn't exist. I studied broadcast journalism, radio, TV broadcast journalism, to understand how to record and to understand how to capture information and then get it back out into the world. So being in the studio with Bob Clearmountain and watching this guy work was just an incredible learning experience, and someone I didn't mentor with him, but I watched for years what he did and asked questions. And when Daryl and John were done, and I was part of the road crew, when we were breaking the equipment down and putting things away, and Bob was making mixes and editing the tape, I'd be probably the last one to leave, watching him do things and saying to myself, this is the path. Like, this is where you get to the end, because this guy is creating. Daryl and John have basically made the meal. Bob is going to present this to the world. He's putting it all together. He's editing all the songs down. He's making the mixes. They're going through the album sequences together. It's all part of the process of the art. So for me, Bob Clearmountain was one of the biggest influences I could have in the studio, watching it all come together, because he was listening, paying really close attention to what Daryl and John were trying to do, what they wanted to do, and he was executing it and giving it back to them with the result of, yeah, that's it, that's the song, let's do it, okay, you got, so if that was the answer.
And it's funny, if I may also mention, I had an amazing mentor, and his name was Bob Clearmountain. Okay? The truth is, from 1978 to 1984, I used to sleep on the floor of the power station in New York City.
That Bob Clearmountain built.
With Tony Bon Jovi. Tony Bon Jovi was the owner. I got to know Tony through a mutual friend. Tony Bon Jovi is John Bon Jovi's cousin. But I slept on Tony's floor from approximately on and off between 78 and 82. And I got to watch Bob Clearmountain, Larry Alexander, Neil Dorsman, Bob Schoeneman, the amazing people make these records. Bruce Springsteen make The River, David Bowie make Scary Monsters, all these amazing things. But it was that mentoring was everything for me, because I couldn't have figured it out myself. I couldn't have read it in a book. But watching these amazing people work, and no two guys or girls had the same method. They all came at it from a different way. But I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm going to take Bob's. I'm going to do that. Like, oh, and Neil Dorsman, I'm going to take that from him. And I put my own style together by watching all these amazing people work, and then made it into my own. And then again, Tony Bon Jovi in 1980 came down to Studio 4 here in Philly and gave us his power station room design, purely because we were friends. Now, I wasn't going to be a competitor to the power station in New York City, but we had the same room design, and that's what put Studio 4 on the map. So again, it was that mentoring friendship that got Studio 4 started here in Philadelphia in 1980, 1981. So, it's funny, you mentioned Bob Clearmountain. In this case, it happened to be the same guy, right?
Hey everyone, thank you so much for coming to Temple. It's great to see you guys here today and all the stuff that you have to say about the music industry. You've talked a lot about a lot of the technical aspects of the music industry. This may be a little bit out of the ballpark, but I was wondering if you could touch on like the PR, social media, and venue relationship management, any of that aspects, stuff along those lines.
Well, obviously, getting your message out to the world is paramount to pretty much everything you do. I mean, sure, you can create and avoid, but it's the analogy of, and I've heard this from people like authors who write, just purely write books or articles or whatever it might be, or painters for that matter. They kind of create in a vacuum. They're making their art, they're creating what they create, and it's not until the artist hangs the painting on the wall in a gallery or someone buys, but they never get the actual interaction. Whereas being a musician, and being especially a live musician, you get to write the songs in your room or in your studio or whatever in solitude, but then you play it for people and you get an immediate reaction. Now, getting the word out on all that is absolutely important, because no one wants to create something they're proud of and find that no one knows about it. It's increasingly more difficult in today's world because of the glut and the amount of information that's available. So you have to find a way to cut through that. But at the same time, at least it's available. Back in the old days, you had a system whereby you had radio stations in collusion with big record companies, and basically they controlled how music was disseminated, who heard what songs became hits and things like that. Now your generation has the world, you have the universe, the entire world is something that you can reach out to. And you can do it through social media, or you can do it through the more traditional ways of having a PR company. I think mentioning a PR company and PR and marketing is a huge component. And that's something, I'm glad you brought it up, because it's not something we discussed. I have a PR company in Nashville that works purely on my solo work. We work together on my social media presence, and we work together when I'm going to release something. And then I have a completely separate PR and marketing company that works on Hall & Oates, because Hall & Oates is a much bigger project. So it would be too much for one company. But here again, that's a part of this thing that we all do that is very, very critical to it. And I'm glad you brought it up because there's opportunities there as well. Tons.
Hello. Hi, I'm Justin. I'm a senior. Thanks for coming today, first off. You all touched on the need to seize opportunities when they're presented to you. So were there times in your career where it was like defining moments where you knew it was the right opportunity, or did you just let things fall into place? Like, how did you know the opportunity in front of you was the right one?
I'm going to carry on what I was saying before about being in the studio with Daryl and John when I was younger. I was trying to be a recording engineer. That's what I wanted to do. When there were no recording courses, there was no way to learn. What I did was take classes to educate myself on how tape machines worked and things like that. And ultimately became a sound engineer in the city when I grew up in New York City. So I became a sound engineer because I understood it at that point. And then the opportunity to work with Daryl and John came up, but not as their recording engineer, just as one of their technicians. So here I was in a big recording studio with someone who was going to be the biggest engineer in the world. I didn't know that, but I was watching him going, yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to be this guy right here, a guy who's got his hands on the faders. But I never went there because the opportunity with Daryl and John was one of, well, now I'm part of their team and I'm interacting with them on a musical level. I was programming drums, we were programming synths, we were using MIDI to create the album. We knew we were going on the road, we were already talking about it. Daryl and John were talking to the crew and going, okay boys, so we're making a record. How are we gonna do this summer? You know, let's start thinking about this. So taking the path, it was like, do I want to quit and stay here in the recording studio, or do I want to seize this moment and run with it and see where it's going to take me? I'm still in the industry, I'm still passionate about music, I'm still doing this, and I'm doing it, and I'm being part of a team. So if that answers your question, I mean, if you get to a point where you're fulfilling something inside you, and you can still see the path ahead of you, and you're still on the same path. You may not be doing exactly the same thing, and there's always an opportunity to make a left turn or to make a right turn. You're never bound by anything. You make your own decisions as you go. And I've quit plenty of jobs. I've had big positions and walked away from them because I wasn't getting fulfilled anymore. I wasn't feeling that passion working for a particular artist, even though they could have been a huge, huge artist at the time. If you're not getting it from them, you step back and you go, hey, I don't have to do this. I know what I can do. I know where I can take myself. I'll find another path and I'll just continue down my path to grow to where I want to go. It doesn't have to be necessarily this lane on this highway. So, you know, you take the opportunities and you grow with them, hopefully with the passion, which we all still have, and that takes you, well, that's taking me here. We were talking about this on the way in the airport. I wouldn't be here today, sitting here, if I hadn't taken the job with Daryl and John in 1980. And if I would have become a recording engineer and stayed with Bob Clearmountain, well, who knows where I'd be, but, you know, it doesn't matter. But this path, that path took me here. So follow the path, keep the passion in you, and let it motivate you to where you want to go. You'll get there, you will.
We have some Instagram questions. When you're buying sunglasses, do you look at the frame or the tint? I think this was supposed to be, I think they thought Daryl Hall was coming here. Because you'll never see Daryl without his sunglasses. Yeah, oh yeah, okay, the tint. And the other one was, what type of oatmeal do you like? Did I mention that I live in Taylor Swift's old house? There's nothing.
Is there any more? Okay, there's another one.
Hi guys, thanks for being here. Mr. Aquilotto briefly touched upon this, but can you guys describe your aha moment, like the moment where you're like, yeah, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life?
As crazy as it seems, your aha moment, and not to sound cliche, but every single time I have an opportunity to do this, it's aha. It's from the aspect of being a front of house engineer or whatever, even consulting with artists such as John or people to help them bring their vision to reality. Whenever you're part of that, and it's again, not to sound too crazy about it, but what you do or what you aspire to do, not necessarily the person up on the stage. The quote and the term in this business, you become the fifth Beatle. And that's so true because, and John can attest to it as an artist, John can have, and Daryl can have the most incredible night of their life musically and have the best players in the world, which by the way they did still do for many, many, many years. But if you're having a bad day or you're hungover, or you're just not into it and give half the effort, 10,000 people are going to walk out and say, man, they sucked last night. Think about that, Never settle for second. Always give it your best, and you'll have that same aha moment. Mine probably came first time I ever mixed a large stadium. Went up there and that feeling of, oh shit, the lights are out. Whoa, shit. If I don't hit the right button, 60,000 people are going to say, man, he sucks. So always remember that. I think aha is what you make of it. It can happen in the student success center. You never know. Aha moments come what you make of them.
Yeah, you know what? I hate to sound like an old guy, but watching the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. I was 9 years old. I was in we were at my cousin's house for a birthday party. I'm sitting on the floor with my fellow relatives, and they came on Ed Sullivan. And I don't come from a musical family, but everyone in my family loves music and loves to sing. And I come from immigrant parents who just love music. And it was that moment. I was just mesmerized, bowled over, every ounce of music and passion and every atom in my body lit up. And I was just like, that's it, man. That's it. Somehow I have to be involved in music. And my twin brother and I started recording bands when I was in high school. Just a little shitty tape recorder and a couple of mics, in the late 60s. And that was it. And I agree. I have aha moments all the time. I just had an aha moment at the Hollywood Bowl. It was just, oh my God, I'm at the Hollywood Bowl with an orchestra. It blew my mind. It blew my mind. So they're constant, and thank God. And you say, what gives you that passion? That's what gives you that passion, whatever it is. And it doesn't have to be the Hollywood Bowl. It could be, walking by the bell tower and hearing your favorite Sam and Dave song. All of a sudden, it's like, oh man, I love that shit. I'm telling you. You know what? It's the little things that can push your button, and that's it, for me.
I'm sorry. I'm going to take it in a slightly different direction. Early on, when Daryl and I were doing our best to make records, we made 4 albums before we had any commercial success. But one of the things that we decided to do during that period of time when things weren't going as well was we said to ourselves, what's our goal? We thought about it. What's our ultimate goal? Was it to be famous? Was it to make a lot of money? Was it to have tons of hit records? No, it wasn't. Our goal was we're musicians from the time we were children. We want to be musicians for the rest of our life. So what should we do? We should only make decisions predicated on what will allow us to make music, not what will allow us to be famous, to make money, or any of those other things. Because success and monetary rewards are all the byproduct of hard work, professionalism, and dedication. They are not, they should never, ever be a goal. If they become a goal, that's where you've made your first step in the wrong direction, because you'll never reach that goal if that's your only goal. So making that decision, I think, was an aha moment. He's waiting for his.
I really haven't had my aha moment yet, but I can tell you, as someone who has worked with, dozens of artists over my 40 years of doing this, every now and then you walk into a room. The job I have now with the band Chicago that I got earlier this year was a moment of, wow, this is a band that I started listening to in 1969. I loved the first 2 records. It's fantastic. Now I'm their production manager and I'm putting their concerts together every night and standing on the side of the stage and listening to them sing 25 or 6 to 4 or Question 67 or 68. Is it an aha moment? I couldn't tell you if that's what the aha moment is, but there's a tremendous amount of satisfaction that goes on with seeing the end of the path and getting from where I was to where I am now, wanting to be involved in this industry, surrounded by musicians, helping them to create their art and seeing them along. So there's a lot to be said in that, just to follow the path that we've all been talking about. The aha moments come and they come and they come, and you may get to work with Chicago, Darrell Hall and John Oates, whoever it may be, the satisfaction that comes with that, or at yourself as artists and the people you surround yourself with, you also have aha moments, right? So I just wanted to add that in.
All right, we got time for one more.
Make it good.
Okay.
Pressure's on.
Okay, so like we all know, life isn't always sunshine and roses and whatever. So, what's like a particularly rough moment in your career, and how did you choose to just push through it? That's for anyone.
I think, Darrell and I have had an interesting career because it took us 4 albums before we had our first hit. During that period of time, we were learning. We were experimenting. We went through different record companies, different producers. When we finally had success, we had a peak in the mid-'70s, but then we had a few albums that weren't very successful. And it was during that period of time when a lot of people said, oh, you're washed up or whatever, I guess that's it for you guys. It was during that low period that we recalibrated everything we did. We realized that, hey, you know what? The world may look at this as a negative or a down period, but we looked at it as a positive. What we did is we realized what we should do is produce our own records. We should create a band, because we had always previously recorded with studio musicians, and we should record with our live band to capture the energy of what we were putting out there. That changed our entire career. That took us into the 80s where we had tremendous success. So using the downtime for positive and not getting, not just saying to yourself, well, I guess that's it, we should just give up, but powering through and using opportunities wherever you can. My answer was not as good as your question, but thanks anyway. We're done.